Hey everyone, I just wanted to go over a little bit about Sparta and Athens to help you with your last assignment in Greece before you take the quiz and the unit test. So I want to start off with the if you were there. Your father is a wandering trader and has decided it is time to settle down. He offers the family a choice between two cities. In one city, everyone wants to be athletic, tough, and strong. They're good at enduring hardships and following orders. The other city is different. There, you'd be admired for what if you could think deeply and speak persuasively, if you knew a lot about astronomy or history, if you sang and played beautiful music. Which city would you choose and why? The first city is the city of Sparta, and the second city is the city of Athens. And so, as we go through this, we're going to talk a little bit about Sparta first, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Athens. And by the time you're done, you should be able to fill out the assignment of comparing Sparta and Athens. So, Sparta, its main belief was being a military society. So, they very much focused on the military and they had a very strong army. Boys and men in Sparta were supposed to demonstrate that they could be good soldiers. So, from the time that they were very little all the way through their entire adulthood, their job was to protect Sparta and to be part of the military. So, boys at the age of 7 were taken from their homes in order to be taught such skills as that were necessary for being in the military. So, as part of their training, the boys ran, jumped, swam, and threw javelins. A javelin is a very long stick with a point on the end to increase their strength. They were also learned to endure the hardships that they would face as a soldier. Women and girls in Sparta, their job was to help support the men when they were away at war. This is why Sparta women had more rights than Athenian women. So Sparta women worked outside of the home. They could own property, they could own businesses, and they also got to go to school. So their classes were similar to that of the boys, that they were allowed to learn different skills and things like that, such as gymnastics and survival skills and sports, because they thought that then they would be able to have very strong babies, and very strong babies would grow up to be very strong soldiers. They did not learn how to do domestic things like the Athenian women, things like weaving and spinning cloth, because they thought that was beneath them, and so they had their slaves that were in Sparta were responsible for those types of jobs. So a lot of the things that Athenian women did, Sparta women did not. As we move through a little bit, we can see the life of a Sparta as a man, as a boy. So at 7, they left home and they got their basic education. So they did learn a little reading, writing, and math, but the focus was really on physical training. And so from ages 12 to 18, so how old you guys are right now, you would have left school, a formal education as far as reading, writing, and arithmetic or math, and you would be focusing on your physical skills of becoming a good soldier. That training would continue until the age of 20. At 20, you're finally considered a full adult and could be a citizen. And you are officially a soldier. So then you are a full soldier until the age of 30, at which point then you are a full citizen, and then you're allowed to move back home so that you can marry and have a family and participate in the assembly. So in so that's a little bit more about, so again, Spartan women, they received the same physical training like the men, it's just not quite as harsh, so that they could have healthy children. In Sparta, their government was run by 2 kings, so they were an oligarchy. They had their government, they had their kings, and then they had advisors to the kings, and they had the assembly. So they had a group of people that were working together to form the government, but not everybody participated in it. So that's a little bit about Sparta. Again, the big takeaways is that they valued military, they valued strength over education of like mental strength. They wanted physical strength, and they had a very, very strong army. In Athens, on the other hand, they admired the mind or mental strength. So their big value was education versus being very physically strong. And so boys and men in Athens, they went to school, but unlike learning how to jump and run and be a soldier, they learned reading, writing, math, arithmetic, and philosophy. They also went to school from a young age, and they did also serve in the military, but they had a very strong navy. So most of the Athenian men would be in the navy, which is where they have the boats, versus the army, which is where they're on land. Girls and women in Athens, their jobs were to take care of the men and to take care of the household. So they did learn how to weave and how to cook and sew. They were not allowed to go to school. They didn't learn reading, writing, math, and arithmetic unless their parents were very wealthy and they had tutors that could come into the house and they could learn at home. They could not serve in the government. They could not be in juries. They couldn't leave their homes unless they had permission from their husbands or their fathers. They could not own property. They could not have a business. They had very, very few rights, if any, at all. And it was actually because they were so highly valued that women were considered so important in both Athens and Sparta because they could have children and they could continue on and create the next generation. And so they had to be protected. Because how they went about protecting their women was different in Athens and in Sparta. So again, in Athens, they valued educations. Boys from wealthy families were taught how to read and write, and philosophy. They were required to memorize long passages. So similar to the schooling and things like that in Mesopotamia, except they wrote in Greek as opposed to cuneiform, and very few girls got to go to school. So again, as a little bit of a recap, Athens valued, they believed in participation in the government and that education was the most important thing. Women were kept at home and had very little rights. And so the education that they received was that of a domestic life. So learning how to cook and clean, take care of a home, take care of a household. Boys, on the other hand, in Athens were taught to read and write and philosophy and how to think. And their cultural achievements were that of art, architecture, drama, literature, philosophy, democracy, medicine, and science. So a lot of those great discoveries and achievements came out of Athens because they valued education so much. However, Sparta was a very strong army, and they believed very much in their whole center of life revolved around war, and that they were the best and that they would succeed in any situation and they would do what they needed to do in order to prevail and to succeed in any situation. So boys, their education was very military centered, so they learned to be good soldiers. They wanted strong women to also be able to defend Sparta when their main army was away. So they also got to have a similar education than that the boys had, but not as hard of it. So the endurance level was not as strict for the girls as it was for the boys. They were also allowed to have property and businesses and run things because that was what their society needed when their men were away fighting wars. And so their great achievement was military supremacy. In other words, it's why they won the Peloponnesian War, and then they were taken over and they were able to beat or control, I should say, the rest of Greece. So that's a little bit about them as far as Greece and I'm sorry, Sparta and Athens. To review a little bit about the Peloponnesian War, here you can see really easily where the two alliances laid. So there were some areas that were neutral that did very much try to stay out of the war. However, after Sparta won, they were controlled by Sparta, which is why I have said that you're on one side or the other. So you can see the purple is what the area that Athens can control, and you can see that it's all of the coastline and the little tiny islands because Athens had a very strong navy. And so since they had a navy, they could take their boats and go across the sea and control all the area in purple. Sparta had a very strong army, and so they were better at covering things on land. And so they owned this part of the peninsula and this big island here. And then they also had Macedon up here as well, so that they could fight on land when they were fighting against Athens. Athens was in charge of the Delian League, and it was called the Delian League because Delos was, this is the region of Delos, is down here where Athens is. And Peloponnese is this island with the peninsulas where Sparta is. So Sparta was in charge of the Peloponnesian League, coming from Peloponnese. The reason why it's known as the Peloponnesian War is because Sparta won. If Athens had won, we'd probably be talking about the Delian War. So Sparta did end up winning in the end. It took a very long time for the war to go on. And so you can read a little bit more about the Peloponnesian War, about how it started. So Athens started their alliance because they wanted to stop Persia from being able to invade again. And so people at first thought this was a great idea, but then Athens kept wanting more money from its different city-states that it was protecting, and it wanted to be able to control and have more things. And all the money they collected, they just went back to Athens, and the other city states were a little upset about that. So then that's why the alliance for the Peloponnesian League started, was because Athens or Sparta wanted to stop the growth of Athens and they wanted to have a balance to what was going on. Well, eventually they came into conflict with each other, and that was the beginning of the Peloponnesian War. It lasted for many years. There was a truce for a while. For 10 years, neither side gained an advantage while they were fighting. So they said there's going to be a truce. And then that lasted for a while. And then eventually Athens decided, we don't want to follow this truce anymore. So we're going to go and invade Sicily. However, what they thought was going to be an easy battle turned out to be their demise or their downfall. And the Sicilians, or Sicily, won. And so where their navy captured by the Sicilians, they were Sparta was able to come in and take over. So the outcome of that was that for 30 years, Sparta controlled Athens, controlled Athens and the rest of Greece. And it eventually went down to the point to where there was so much infighting and everybody was so weakened that it left it, as this last sentence here says, it weakened Greece and left them open to attack from the outside. And that outside attack came from Rome, which is our next unit that we'll be starting next week. So I hope this helped a little bit about how Athens and Sparta are different from each other, and how what they believed really affected the outcome of different things that happen in Greece. Thanks for watching. Make sure you study for the unit test before you take it. Make sure that you looked through all of your information and have it all in your head so you can do your very, very, very best job. And I will see you soon. Thanks. Bye.